Okay, good morning and welcome to our algebra lesson for 5-1, and that will be the first lesson in chapter 5 for us today. And we are going to focus on finding slope and y-intercept today, or finding the rate of change from different things, from graphs, equations, and tables. So we're going to start on our first page of our note packet that looks like this, and we're going to start with finding slope and y-intercept from a graph. So on a graph, let me remind you that you can find slope on a graph by finding the rise over the run. And you can do this in several ways, but what I like to teach is that we start at the leftmost point on the graph, okay, and we're trying to get to the next point on the graph. So if I'm starting here and I want to get to this point here, the rules are you have to take the blocks, okay? Now rise means how far up or down would I have to travel. So in order to get from this dot to this dot, I'm going to travel up, and you're going to count. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks up, okay? And since we're going up, that's a positive 5. Then I need to turn right, and I'm going to travel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks to the right. And since we're going right, that's also positive. Now, if we had gone down, that would be negative, and left is negative, but since we always start furthest left, we don't usually travel left. And then you simplify. So 5 over 5, if you can simplify that, would be 1. So the slope of this line would be 1. Now, we could have found that a little bit easier if you can see that on a graph there are closer points. So we started here and got here, but there could have been a point right here. Okay, the closer you can get the points together, the less chance you're going to have to simplify. So this would have been 1, rise of 1, and run of 1. And so that would have given us 1 over 1, and that would have given us the same slope of 1. Okay, so that's how we find slope from a graph. Y-intercept on a graph has nothing to do with the slope at all. It literally is asking you what number does your graph, so here's your graphed line going this way, and at what number does it cross your y line, okay? And so here's your y-axis going up and down right here, and at what number do they cross? If you look, they're going to cross right here, and that number on the y-axis is going to be -1. And so that's how you find the y-intercept on a graph. Okay, and I will leave the other one for you to do on your own so that we can move on. The next thing we're going to talk about is finding slope and y-intercept on an equation. Okay, so I'm going to slide down, and I'll start with this one right here, y equal -3x minus 15. Well, when we're using an equation, what we're looking for is that equation is in y equals format, meaning y is by itself. And we want it to look like this, y equal mx plus b, or that can be switched around, but realize that y is alone. Now, the number next to the x, the m in this case, is always going to be our slope, and the number that is not next to the x is going to be the y-intercept. Okay, so what you would do on this first one is you look at it and you go, okay, y is already alone on the left side of the equation. Perfect. There's no work to be done here other than realize that -3 is next to x, so that's our slope, and 15 is by itself, but this is now a -15 because the minus goes with it. So our y-intercept would be -15. Easy peasy. Now, where this gets a little bit more challenging, if you have the note packet with you, if you want to slide down to the one that is in the lower right-hand corner, is here. So the difference now, and for algebra students a lot more often, you will have your equations starting in this format where they're not in y equals. Y is not alone. So the first thing you need to do is get it in y equals. So in order to do that, the y is going to stay here, but we need to get rid of that -3x by canceling that out, and we need to cancel out this 4. All right, so we'll start with a negative 3x. To cancel out a negative 3x, you would add it. So we're going to add 3x here and cancel that out, but then you got to add it over here. We also need to get rid of this 4. Well, this means 4 times y. To cancel a times, we would divide. So we're going to divide by 4 here, and then you have to divide each of your terms on this side by 4. Now, what you really want to do is rewrite this after you've simplified. So only thing left here is y, and then negative 8 divided by 4 would give us negative 2, and then 3 divided by 4 gives us a decimal. So if it gives us a decimal, what we really want to do is leave it in fraction form. So this would be positive 3/4, and then x stays on that. And now you can identify your slope and your y-intercept because y is alone. Well, the slope is not first this time, it's second. That's okay. So our slope is 3/4 because that's next to the x, and our y-intercept would be negative 2. And that's how you find slope and y-intercept from both types of equations. All right, moving on to the back side of the page, we have 2 other things we need to be able to find slope and y-intercept from. The next one is finding slope and y-intercept from a table. So on a table, oops, let's make sure that I'm on screen here. On a table, to find the slope, we're going to use the slope formula. So the slope formula, and remember, slope is represented by m here. Our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is how we find slope from a table and from ordered pairs, which we're going to do next. Okay, so you can really pick any 2 sets here to be your x1, y1. I try to keep it as simple as possible, and I just use the first set. So this is x1, x2, and then we're going to use this as y1, y2. And we'll plug in the numbers. So y2 minus y1 would be 5 minus 3, and x2 minus x1 would be negative 1 minus negative 2. So 5 minus 3 gives us 2. And now this one is a little bit confusing because you do have a negative and then minus a negative. But if you do negative 1 minus negative 2, you get positive 1. And to simplify that, you get positive 2 as your slope. Now, y-intercept is where that graph, if you were to graph all these ordered pairs, where would it cross the y-axis? And so you got to think about this. It's going to cross the y-axis at the ordered pair, and so let's maybe write this down. This is at the ordered pair where x is equal to 0, okay? And so let's think about this. Our answer is right here. X is equal to 0 where y is 7. What that would be on a graph really quickly is this, okay? So if I did this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a quick graph of this, we would graph these ordered pairs. 0, 7 would be left and right 0 and up 7. It's right here. That's exactly on the y-axis, okay? And so that's going to be where this graph cross, and then you would be 1, 9, so you would do your next one. So this is our spot. So our y-intercept in this case is 7. And that's how you find it from a table. Now, if it's not on the table, you would have to use the pattern to work backward or forward to find where it would be 0. Okay, last but not least, probably the most challenging is finding slope and y-intercept from 2 ordered pairs. Now, finding slope from 2 ordered pairs is the exact same as what we just did on the table. We are still going to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The difference is the order here. So this would be x1, y1, because it's the first ordered pair. And this would be x2, y2, because it's the second ordered pair. So plugging that in, you would get negative 1 minus 3 on the top, and the bottom would be 4 minus 2. So simplifying that, negative 1 minus 3 is going to give us negative 4, and 4 minus 2 gives us 2. So our slope is going to end up being negative 2 once we simplify. Now, the y-intercept from ordered pairs, this is something that might be new to many of you. To find y-intercept, you have to use the formula y equal mx plus b. And you are going to plug in numbers for y, m, and x, and you will solve for b, which remember is the y-intercept. So what you want to do, you know m is -2 because that's what you just figured out above. Now, where are we going to get numbers for x and y? The place you're going to get them is one of the two given ordered pairs. Now, I usually like to try to pick the one that looks easier. And since the first one has no negatives, I'm going to pick that one. So for x, I'm going to make +2. And remember, they're right next to each other, which means times in math. I'm going to bring down my equal sign, and I'm going to substitute 3 for y. And we don't know b, so I'm going to leave it b. And I'm going to solve for that in a minute. Okay, in order to solve for it, I have to first multiply this. -2 times 2 is -4. Bring down my equals, bring down my 3, bring down my b. Okay, and so now I have to either do this in my head or algebraically. This is really saying -4 plus b with the y-intercept is equal to 3. Algebraically, you would cancel this out, okay? So whatever is right here, you want to cancel. Well, to cancel out a -4, I would add 4, okay? But I also have to add it over here. And so b is what's left on this side. 3 plus 4 is 7. That is going to be my y-intercept. So my y-intercept for that would be 7. Okay, hopefully that's enough to help you out. The homework for today would be to do 5-1 practice, and I am going to assign the evens on that. So good luck with that. If you have any questions, don't forget you can email me at any time. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hopefully you have a great day.